That was a really good film. Wait a minute, why are my thoughts so loud? The heck is with these yellow inner monologue boxes? Aiden? Hey moviegoers, welcome to another movie review with me, Shinobi Nando, and today we're doing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. As I'm prone to do this, before we begin, let's start off with a nice little spider pun counter there, Aiden. Now, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a comic book retelling of the origin story of Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, in this movie, we not only get the origin story for young Miles Morales as the new Spider-Man on the block, he's also joined by 5 different Spider people from the Spider-Verse as a whole, or the multiverse. Now, I'm just going to get this out of the way. For me, this film was amazing. I absolutely love this film. There's so much fan favorites and tributes to the Spider-Man lore as a whole. This is definitely a film for any Spider-Man fan. Please go and see it. Anyways, let's move on with the review as a whole. So first things first, I really want to bring up something that concerned a few people I know. It's the art style. Now, I found the art style absolutely sensational. They've really gone for a motion comic art style this time around, even lowering the frame rate in order to make it look more like pages turning, I suppose. I personally found this art style really nice and innovative. They do lots of cool little things like having speech bubbles or thought text bubbles around Miles and the other characters, much like they do in comics when characters are having an inner monologue. Some of the shots are even multi-panels, just like a comic book itself. Now, in terms of the frame rate and everything, I didn't really notice it too much. It didn't make the film look too choppy. There was, however, some nitpicks I have here. There were particular scenes where the movie would focus on something either in the forefront or the background. Now, that caused some kind of severe blurring effect due to the art style or maybe the frame rate. It did make me think that I accidentally forgot to pick up some kind of 3D glasses at the start of the film at the cinema kiosk. But it was in fact just like a design choice. The colors and everything, the characters really pop. And most importantly, the action is very fluid, but very fast paced, which lends well to the obviously Spider-Man's enemies and himself, his powers and his speed. Now, moving on to the story, again, there were some concerns here, I know, from those who aren't too familiar with the multiverse or the Marvel Universe as a whole. So first and foremost, this story takes place in what we call the Ultimate Universe. Now, in the early 2000s, Marvel, instead of doing a full reboot, created a separate universe where they did a modern retelling or reboot of a lot of their characters, including Spider-Man. In this, he went back to being a teenager. He had some adventures. Then Miles Morales was introduced as a replacement for him after the original Spider-Man died in that universe. And for the most part, this is in that universe. There is a bit of blending that I noticed. Again, there's a lot of fan service and tribute and homage. In particular, the Spider-Man in this universe seems to be more of a homage to Ben Reilly. I was quite shocked to learn that it was Chris Pine. He did a spectacular job, by the way, voice acting his brief stint as Peter Parker from the Ultimate Universe. Now, just like in Miles' origin story, Spider-Man dies and he has to fill his quite big boots that he leaves behind, becoming the next Spider-Man after being bit by a different but similar radioactive spider. However, like I said, the crux of this film is the twist that something happens, again I won't reveal what, which brings our Spider-Man, or the normal Spider-Man if you will, to the Ultimate Universe, along with the other 4. Now, the big difference with Spider-Man 616, for those of you who are uninitiated, the 616 universe is kind of like the mainstream one that most people are accustomed to. That's the normal Marvel universe. They chose, and I thought this was a brilliant design choice, to go for a Spider-Man middle-aged, in his late or mid-40s. He's been there, he's done that, he's been around the block. There's a lot of jokes. He's overweight. He's first in a trench coat and sweatpants as he's seen in the trailers. He's graying, he's got scruff. And it's basically a new Spider-Man taking over from the old one, and the old Spider-Man relearning what it is to be a superhero whilst mentoring the new one. But again, if you saw the trailers, you know that there are another 4. We have fan favorite Spider-Gwen from a universe where it was Gwen Stacy that got bit by a spider rather than Peter Parker. We have Penny Parker from the not too distant future, who uses a Mecha Spider-Man suit. We have Spider-Man Noir, which was one of my favorite in the film. This is a Spider-Man that was set in the 30s, kind of like the Dick Tracy comics. He likes drinking milkshakes and punching Nazis. Now guys, they couldn't chose anyone better to voice act this Spider-Man. They got none other than Nick Cage to do the voice, and it was one of the best casting decisions I could ever think of. And lastly, we have Spider-Ham, which is from a alternate universe where everyone's an anthropomorphic animal, and Peter Porker, as he's called, is a pig that got bitten by a radioactive pig, but got spider powers. Now, all these spider people are displaced into the Ultimate Universe, and they all are trying to find their own way home while also instructing young Miles on his new powers. Now, the story is absolutely fantastic, guys. This is probably one of my favorite Spider-Man films. You could say it's the superior Spider-Man film. Has the right amount of humor, has the right amount of heart. It's very respectful of both characters. I don't think any fan's going to be upset with Miles. I know some people were worried, again, if you don't know his full history, of them trying to shoehorn him in. No, it's nothing like that. Also, having a middle-aged 616 Spider-Man come over to mentor him is a really, really nice and touching baton pass between the two, as he's essentially not only giving his blessing, but showing him the ropes. A lot of people that I've seen, especially on Twitter, have said that Miles kind of more represents the younger generation and New York as it is now, and I think that is very true, and they kind of show that with his version of New York and the music and the art style and graffiti and everything like that. He's a modern Spider-Man for modern audiences. I also got to say big props to Sony for not making Peter young again. We've had that again. It's been overdone. We have a young Peter Parker in the Avengers films, and ironically, Spider-Man hasn't been a teenager in the comics for decades now. In fact, most of his career in the comics was him as an adult. Now guys, like I said, there are a ton of Easter eggs, so keep your eyes open for that, including a particular one that PlayStation 4 fans may know. Keep your eye out for that one. So for my final verdict on this spoiler-free review, this is the ultimate Spider-Man film in my opinion, especially as a Spider-Man fan and somebody who knows the lore and the history and the different alternate versions. This is such a great film. I enjoyed it probably even more than Homecoming, and that's saying a lot because this is a cartoon. Now this is again aimed, I think, at teenagers and hardcore and casual Spider-Man fans alike. This is for everyone, really. It is a bit dark for younger children, but again, this film is simply astonishing. Now, there are a few nitpicks that I'll go over in a spoiler discussion once the film is officially released, but I have to say I give this film 5 ninja stars out of 5. Definitely go out in cinema, see it straight away, opening day, early preview, what have you. Go out and see it. If you're a Spider-Man fan, you'll absolutely love it. Now, one last thing to add, I did see it with someone who wasn't such a big Spider-Man fan, and not only were they a tad concerned when they first saw the premise of the film, but B, they were also confused by a lot of the references. But he said that just made him want to go out and Google things or find out more about Spider-Man and his extended universe as a whole. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, please give this a like. If you have any questions, or if you want to let me know who your favorite Spider-Man, doesn't even have to be from this film, is, let me know who your preferred version of Spider-Man is down in the comments down below. And lastly, subscribe, because we're going to be doing more movie reviews, more collector's editions unboxings like we did with Spider-Man PS4, and a lot of other great content here in the future. Alright, true believers, I'll see you in the next video. Excelsior!